Welcome back to The Road Chose Me. On today's episode, we're going to talk all about how I navigate when I'm driving around the world. What maps do I use, what GPS and what maps in that GPS, what phone apps, what guidebooks, all of that is coming up. Also, how you can load maps into your GPS for free and how you can use crowdsourced data for free and use your turn-by-turn GPS. So all of that's just coming up. It's raining hard outside, so I'm going to film this one under the porch. Stick around and let's dive into navigation for international overlanding. So let me start from the very beginning. When I drove from Alaska to Argentina, I had absolutely no digital navigation of any kind. I didn't have a GPS, I didn't have a phone, I never used my laptop or a tablet or anything like that for navigation. I did it all with paper maps. And I know that sounds really romantic, and that's kind of what I was looking forward to. And to be honest, it worked fairly well in North America and Central America. In North America, I had a Rand McNally map, and in Central America, in most places, there's kind of only one or two roads that you're interested in anyway. As long as you're going south, you're probably going to wind up where you want to go. But to be honest with you, when I got to South America, navigation became extremely stressful. Some of the big cities there are absolutely enormous, and I learned really quickly it's easy enough to drive into a big city because all roads lead in, but when you're trying to leave a big city, there's only one specific road you want to take. And in fact, it took me 4 hours to get out of Quito in Ecuador, and in Buenos Aires, I drove around for hours and hours, utterly lost. I had to stop and ask directions all the time, and it was really stressful. And having to deal with the traffic and the different driving conditions, and then on top of that, to constantly be lost, it really took away from the trip, and I resigned myself to finding a better solution for the next trip. But before we move on, let's talk about the maps that I did use and how well they worked out. The first thing I did is I used Lonely Planet and other backpacking guidebooks. And they usually have maps in them at a city scale and also country scale. And they were a good way to get an overview of where I wanted to go, and most of the time they were good enough. For nearly every city in Central and South America, they have a town square, and the town square is usually in the Lonely Planet. So a habit that I developed is I would just fumble my way towards the town square. I would ask locals where it was, and I would slowly hone in until I arrived at the town square. Once I was there, I'd be on my Lonely Planet map, and from there I could drive out to wherever I needed to go based on that map. It worked, but it was quite stressful. As well as that, I often stopped and tried to pick up a map of each country, either in touristy type places or in bookstores or anywhere else I thought they would have a map. And hilariously, most countries, the maps I was able to get, they pretty much had pictures of little animals and a sun in the corner with a smiley face. So they certainly weren't to scale. They certainly weren't the kind of maps that were useful for driving. They were more, if you were sitting in the back of a tourist bus, you got to see a little picture of a smiling llama go by. So for driving, it was not ideal, but it did work. I did get it done, and it was extraordinarily cheap. So relying on paper maps alone, you can absolutely get it done. For me personally, I've moved on from there, and I recommend you do the same. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways you can do GPS navigation, and everybody has their own preferences. And what I've come to use is a small Garmin GPS. This is called their Drive 5, I think because it's 5 inches. And I really like this thing because it's fairly inexpensive and it has a lot of really good features that work well. And I think Garmin have been around the longest, and so their routing algorithms are by far the best. So when you're doing turn-by-turn navigation in the mega cities of Nigeria or South Africa, it just works. And I'll be honest with you, when you're driving on the wrong side of the road and you're dodging potholes and you're dealing with language barrier and all of that stuff combined, it's really nice just to rely on turn-by-turn navigation, and it's really nice when it just works. When you miss a turn, when you're feeling stressed, the GPS just makes up for it and it takes away all of that stress. So I came to rely on this thing really heavily. And another reason that I like it so much is because it has an SD card slot in the back, So you can actually put in a memory card here with maps on it that you load in yourself. And what that means is you can load OpenStreetMaps onto this GPS. And OpenStreetMaps is like an open source or free version of Google Maps. So that means for the entire planet, you never again have to pay for maps. Don't bother buying the version that has free upgrades for life or any of that stuff. You simply don't need it. You can have free maps loaded onto this that work all over the world. And I was really staggered. All through Europe, Africa, and all of North America, those free maps that I put on my Garmin, they have been absolutely superb. They have every single street, intersection, police station, hospital, embassy, everything is in that mapping pack. Gas stations, water sources, and it's unbelievably accurate. So I can count on one hand the number of times the maps in this GPS haven't accurately represented where I've been. Even when I was in Sudan, Ivory Coast, the Congo, the maps that you can load onto here for free are amazing. So don't underestimate how good those maps can be and the fact that you don't actually need to shell out money for the Garmin maps. To download those maps, go to this website. I'll throw a link in the description where you can convert them into a format for the Garmin. Choose generic routable new style, and a bit lower down, you could choose a predefined region if you want, like a country or a state, or you can use the map below if you click this little checkbox and you can highlight whichever parts of the world you want. So you can just click squares to have them be highlighted, and if you use Shift, you can select more than one. You can even just draw a square like this. Don't be tempted to get too much though. You don't want to load in a whole continent into your Garmin. It'll really slow things down. I usually just do a couple of countries at a time. So choose what you want. I've got a bit of North Africa there. And then just above the map, you can put in your email address. So type that in, hit submit, and it'll send you an email telling you that you're in the queue, and then it will send you another email with a download link so you can actually download the map that it's generated. Now you want to connect your memory card to your computer. You can either do this with a memory card reader or just plug your Garmin straight in while the memory card is in the Garmin. In that memory card, at the top level, you want to make a folder called Garmin, and in there, you put the file that has .img on the end of it. And it doesn't matter what you call that file, as long as it's inside of a folder called Garmin, then the Garmin will be able to pick it up. And you can see I already have a whole bunch sitting on my memory card for different parts of the US and Canada. So then restart your Garmin by holding the power button down for 10 seconds. When it starts up again, go into Settings, then Map and Vehicle. Down the bottom is My Maps, and you can see all those files I had on my memory card are here as options, and I can just turn them on and off as I want. I usually turn them all off except for the one I'm actually using. That makes the routing just a little bit faster on the Garmin. But that's it. Now you have free maps for the entire world. While we're on the topic of mapping packs, for Africa specifically, there is a company called Tracks for Africa who make a map kit that if you're heading into Southern Africa, if you're in South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, all of that region, they make maps that are unbelievably good. They're good in the cities, they're good on the paved roads, but where they really, really shine is all of the remote off-road tracks. So if you want to drive dry riverbeds and see wild elephants, if you want to get really remote in that part of Africa, I do recommend buying Tracks for Africa. And again, it just comes as a little mapping pack that you can load straight into your Garmin, and it'll do turn by turn right on your dashboard. And Tracks for Africa do have an app as well for phones and tablets, but all the reviews I've read say that it's crap and not to get it. Instead, just get the version that loads onto a Garmin and you'll be set with that. As well as the GPS, I really like to have paper maps as well, because I like to be able to get a bigger overview and a big picture of where am I within a country and which way am I heading. So I do buy paper maps for certain regions and certain countries, but not all of the time. My advice to you is to buy those paper maps ahead of time. Once you're actually in countries like Nicaragua or Guatemala or the Congo, your chances of finding a map are extremely slim, so you want to take them with you before your trip. And with any luck, you'll meet other travelers on the way as well, and you'll be able to exchange guidebooks and maps, giving away the countries you've just come from and getting the countries you're just about to go to. So one of the maps I was advised to buy for Africa is the Michelin map. And these have been really highly regarded as the best maps for Africa. And you know what? My advice is these are terrible and I don't think you should buy them. Maybe in the 90s these were good, but they're just so high level, the scale is so zoomed out, it doesn't give you enough detail and you can't actually use them for driving day to day. In fact, it's about as useful as just zooming out really far on Google Earth or Google Maps and looking at that. My advice is save your money, don't buy the Michelin maps. What I recommend instead is these maps called Reise Know-How. This is a company out of Germany who I think have the most extensive maps and guidebooks of the entire planet, and these things are fantastic. It's printed on waterproof and rip-proof paper, so first of all they're really durable and they have a really good level of detail that I like. Not only are they showing you roads and cities and contour lines and, usual mapping stuff, they also show highlights. They're marked as stars and they're a really good way to find places that you otherwise wouldn't find and things to go and explore when you're in a given country. Sometimes Reise have maps per country, like this one I got of Sudan, and other times they kind of include whole regions, like this is all of West Africa. I kept my West Africa map because this is my favorite map that I've ever owned in my life. This includes so many of the highlights for me and the countries that I enjoyed, and it has all my notes and scribbles and all the regions of the world, that seem so shrouded in mystery, but I was able to go and explore because I had this really good map. So that's a bit of background of what I use in terms of GPS and paper map combination to be able to drive around and get anywhere I want in the world. As well as that, of course, there's a ton of different apps you can get on your phone or on a tablet now that are really useful. The first app that I highly recommend and I think is indispensable is called iOverlander. This app is completely free, so you should absolutely go and download it if you're not already using it. And this is crowdsourced data from other overlanders all over the world. Based on GPS coordinates, it gives you things like campgrounds, embassies, wild camping, border crossings, and so much more. It includes points like where to buy insurance, where to fill your propane, remote gas stations, and it's really great because it includes a big comments section for each point of interest, and those comments include up-to-date information about if the place still exists, if the prices have changed, if there's an update this year compared to last year. iOverlander is jam-packed with all of the kind of stuff you need as an overlander. So when people ask me, where did I buy insurance for a given country, or how did I find out about the visa requirements, how did I find the embassy, the answer to all those questions is have a look in iOverlander because it's in there. And it's in there for every country in the world. As far as I'm concerned, iOverlander is absolutely essential. I was really impressed by how many people around the world are using it. Even people who look very non-tech savvy driving around Africa, they all had iOverlander and they were all contributing to it, which is great because it makes it better for all of us. Something not many people know is it's possible to load all of the iOverlander points into your Garmin GPS. So on my dash, I can actually route to any one of those points of interest using the Garmin software's turn-by-turn navigation. And again, this just removes so much stress because you don't have to try and look up street names. You don't have to worry about street numbers changing on opposite sides of the road. It's all based on GPS coordinates. So it will route you to that point of interest, to the nearest 5 feet, which means when you're in the capital city of the Congo and you just really want to get to the Overlander campground, it's going to take you straight there every time, no stress.
To load the iOverlander points of interest into your Garmin, you want to go to the iOverlander website and then choose Browse Places by Country. And you can see every country in the entire world is listed here, and there are a lot of places. So scroll all the way down to the bottom to Canada, and I'm going to download the GPX file of those points of interest for Canada. Once you've downloaded the file, rename it to the name of the country and make sure you put .gpx on the end. From there, plug your Garmin into your computer and wait till it shows up, then open the Garmin software POI loader. I'll put a link in the description. It's free software for Mac and PC. From there, we're going to choose to load new POIs, and we're going to choose the file we just downloaded, now called Canada.gpx. I like meters and kilometers, so I'll leave it as that. And on the next screen, I can choose my actual Garmin device. Mine's the Drive 51. I'm going to leave it named Canada. It's handy to have it named by country. And mine already has them in there, so I'll just overwrite them. Leave it as Express, click Continue, and a couple of seconds later, all those points of interest are loaded directly into your Garmin. Every Garmin is a little bit different, and usually there's a way to add options to your home screen. So I've added the custom POIs there on the bottom right. And now when I go there, I have them listed by country for all the ones I've added. And inside the Canada ones that I just added, you can see these are all the points directly from iOverlander. So it shows me the name and how far away they are. If I pick one, I can get more information. I can see it on the map, and I get the description straight out of iOverlander. So if someone's typed in how much it costs and all of that stuff, it's right here on my Garmin. And of course, I can just hit go and the Garmin will navigate directly to that place, no fuss.
Another app that I find absolutely essential is called Maps.me. And again, this is for smartphones or tablets. This is also completely free. This is actually based on the OpenStreetMap data. And so I know some people use this for their driving GPS, for their turn-by-turn navigations. I think it can work, but my beef with it, it doesn't work very well in terms of its routing software. So it will often try to route you on walking paths, or it will take you down a whole bunch of really tiny streets instead of taking you on the nice ring road. Its turn-by-turn just isn't as well developed as Garmin's. So I personally don't like it when I'm driving, but what I use it for is when I'm walking. So whenever I set out on foot in a city that I don't know, Maps.me has been absolutely essential. It contains everything, even like street restaurants, ATMs, embassies. It's really fantastic for getting around. So for example, when I was in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, when I was in Khartoum in Sudan, I would walk around with Maps.me and it was no problem at all to get everywhere I wanted to go. As far as I'm concerned, that one is also essential, and it's an app that I'll never go without in terms of navigation. When I'm outside the Jeep, I also find Gaia GPS to be fantastic. And again, I know a lot of people use this for driving, whereas I use the Garmin. I really like Gaia when I'm out hiking, or when I'm kayaking, or when I'm kind of out in the wilderness. I found Gaia to be amazing. With all of its different map layers, it has the ability to view maps offline, so you don't have to have internet. You can easily add waypoints, you can do tracking, you can do all kinds of stuff like that with Gaia. And if you're interested, down in the description, I've got a link for Gaia where you can get discounts if you buy a version. So check that out if you'd like to use the Gaia app. I'll do a video in the future showing more of its features as well. And then the last thing that I often use is when I download the OpenStreetMaps for my Garmin, it also comes in a file format that you can load into Garmin's free software called Basecamp. And this is software that you run on your laptop that basically is all of the bells and whistles for mapping software. And again, it's really brilliant. You can load in the iOverlander points of interest. You can also load in your GPX track logs from your Garmin. So in terms of seeing where you've gone and seeing where you're going to go next, I really like this approach. And again, it's completely free across the board, which to me is a huge win. When I'm planning ahead, when I want that overview, I zoom out a lot and I can see what's coming up. But then it's really nice to be able to zoom in all the way down to the precise detail of where I'm going to camp that night or where exactly is the border crossing. The combination again of OpenStreetMaps and free Garmin software works really well for me for route planning. And I know that a lot of people like to stick a tablet on their dashboard and then use some kind of mapping app on their tablet. And I've never really liked this idea for a couple of reasons. One of which is a tablet is just so big. I feel like it takes up so much space in my seating area. And it's kind of such a big high-techy screen. It's kind of demanding my attention when I really want to be concentrating on what's happening outside in the landscape. Another reason I don't like a big tablet is because at every border and every police checkpoint, the military guys, the customs guys, they're going to kind of stick their nose in your driver's compartment and they're going to have a bit of a snoop around and a bit of a look. I don't like the idea of having such a big flashy touchscreen display. To me, it just kind of screams money. I feel like it's going to attract unwanted attention. So I prefer just to have the tiny little Garmin. It's kind of nondescript. I actually turn it off at every border and every police interaction, just so that it doesn't sort of scream, look at me, you know, I'm a fancy gadget from the first world. So I prefer having kind of a smaller, nondescript display. And as it got covered in dust, I just left it covered in dust so it didn't look new and shiny. Same story, I think, with the big new Garmin Overlander. I mean, this is basically just a big tablet, but a really expensive one. I personally don't think it's worth spending so much money for something that may get broken or stolen. I'd much rather have a GPS that just costs $100 or $200, and that way I can replace it if I need to. So there you have it. That's what I use to navigate when I'm driving around the world. And you'll see it's a couple of different solutions that I think work really well because they're cheap and they're accurate and they're reliable. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. If this was helpful, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe button. And as always, I'll see you next time on The Road Chose Me.